Hi there, welcome to Bottled Up. I'm Lou.
Hi, and I'm John. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're still talking. You can never stop us from doing that. But today we're going to talk to Lou, my wife for more than 17 years, about the years that her and her family spent with her first husband, who was a problem drinker. So let's start right at the beginning. Did you know that Steve was a problem drinker before you got married?
On paper, no. On reflection, I think two things that stand out. One was painful, one was just interesting. I went away, I was a singer-songwriter, so I went away and did a little mini tour for a week. Looking back on it, every time I rang up, he was in the pub. I could hear the pub in the background. And then on our wedding night, he fell asleep rather than going forward into the thing that's supposed to be the most important thing he told me about loving me. So that was really hard.
Did that start any alarm bells, or were you too much in love to think about that?
Well, that's a really interesting thing. I think that, that you read this in wedding ceremonies, this, from the Bible, love believes all things.
Yes.
I think that is almost full to overflowing when you first start. So they are incidences that you make allowances for. Your partner really loves you, so they are extremely apologetic. You're absolutely sure it's all going to work out. You're the nearest to Nirvana and fairy tale at that point in your relationship. So I filed them under incidences.
Right.
And then it gradually, painfully dawns on you that you've got an issue and not a series of incidences.
It's interesting that we look at the drinkers and we think, why can't you recognise it? And then from what you're saying, you didn't recognise it either. No, there are two things happening. There are signs, and then there are the signs that we actually pay any attention to.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't. It's not, we have 20/20 hindsight.
Yeah.
I should have seen that way back then.
We have a little conversations, don't we, sometimes, when you come into the sphere of somebody who may be living with a partner or about to get married, And our rather brutal advice would be, if they've got a drink problem now, the fact that you're going to get together, live under the same roof or get married, it's unlikely to get any better. But nobody wants to hear that when they're fully in love. They really do.
Absolutely
I didn't want
not,
it.
I mean, my wife, if I can just interject for a minute, my wife knew that I had a problem. Well, she didn't know that I had a problem, but she knew that I drank a lot. She knew that I took a lot of drugs. She knew that I partied every weekend. She knew all of that. And her words to me as we wandered down the aisle was, well, now you'll change, won't you?
Yeah.
And I thought, no,
And the other complication is you are learning to live together, and with that big fairy tale love that's really high at the beginning, you are adapting to each other. You sleep on the different side of the bed for you, if you all of these things without a demur. I mean, my husband really loved me, so he would do anything for me, except, ironically, the one thing that I wanted more than anything was to stop drinking.
So when did it first twig there's a problem here?
Again, I can't. It is, I think, a growing awareness, a growing realization. This is why one of our, we know one or two things that we put up there. The thing that gets clicked most is my husband a problem drinker?
Yes. Am I making a fuss?
But yeah, you're desperate then. Your reality is having arguments with the bit of you that wants it all to work, be happy ever after. So you go searching for answers. And that's what I did, except that this was years ago.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot out there.
So
There was nothing for
how
families.
long into your marriage were you?
Maybe a couple of years.
Couple of years.
What actually happened was, he worked in a sheepskin business, and he always came home at a certain time for his meal, and one night it just didn't arrive. Meal got burnt. About 8 o'clock he rang up from the pub. Again, those noises went, I've been here before. And just said, sorry, I met some mates. you know, and then was mortified that I was upset, you know. So we filed that under, oh, he's just having a good time. And that's when this is when the excuses start coming from your drinker, you know.
Yeah.
You feel a bit guilty because you're thinking, and he's thinking, but I just met some mates and all we did was go down the pub and have a pint. Implication, don't be a spoilsport. Surely you can understand these were old friends. So then the denial begins inside, you know, so you place it under understandable cock-up.
Did you drink with him at this time? Or?
Well, a bit, but I didn't particularly like that, really, because, you know, I didn't like the bit that came out of him when he was with his mates, because it's almost as if all of them together getting drunk, you know, there's enough coercion going on for you to accept it, but get a whole load of us. They're all playing, oh, come on, have another drink, and, you know, so, you know, you're being kind of drawn into this collusive, getting pissed circle.
A surfeit of alcohol and testosterone did not go well.
Yeah. So I didn't do that, and we had kids. You know, when, in the 5th year we had kids. So you know, somebody had to be the grown up, and there was only 2 of us in the relationship. So sadly, it had to be me. Yeah.
So I mean, did you say anything about it? I mean, did you start to have arguments, or was it?
Well, yeah. You start with pleading. You start with pleading because you know you're loved. And you know they'll do anything for you, and he always would to the day he died, do anything else for me except for that. So you really believe that you know, you have power. You believe you have power in that love. And of course they say yes. And of course they say, yeah, we're so sorry. And at that time they really mean it. But he was a binge drinker.
Yeah.
So that was the first bit. So then he started doing it more. First it was a night, and then it became a few days. Right. You know. So then
was that the first time it had become a few days?
Yes, I can't remember when it was, but I know then I came out of pleading, and I went into withholding and coldness and punishing, because I felt really, really angry, and I felt that he was, you know, I gave him this precious trust every time he said he would stop, and every time he broke that trust, I felt that was a vessel that was, first of all, was 3 pieces and I glued it together, then 5 pieces and I glued it together. And then it just felt like it was just shattering. It was my heart was shattering into pieces that I couldn't glue together. So I got really mad at that point.
You said this was about how far into the marriage was this? Was it 5, 10, how many years?
It is a slight blur trying to work out exactly where, because it is pervasive and invasive, but it doesn't suddenly occur. It you know, it creeps up on you, and you're, with all of these things that we talk about in the 4 Ps, it's getting bigger and bigger, and you're trying to find more and more tools to get it to go down again. So it is hard to know. Because it's like a monster that's like, you know, my husband Mark II, that first of all appears, and then gradually you recognise the monster is becoming more important than you are, which is really scary.
The reason I was asking that was I was wondering how to the marriage and how long you continued afterwards. I was trying to get some kind of gauge on that.
You mean, did I stay with him?
Yes.
Well, I chucked him out a few times because everybody says you should stay where you are.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, but not for very long. No, once, I think he went to stay with someone. But, you know, we got 2 kids, and they were young, you know, and then they were older and didn't want to go. So you feel pretty powerless. And you know, my kids, he loved me, he loved the kids. And when he wasn't drinking, that was who he was. You know, he wasn't perfect. Somewhere along the line, we discovered that my son, when he was 13, was ADHD. And he began to read books on ADHD. I remember him reading a bit about ADHD and addiction, which is very related.
This is Steve, not your son.
Yes. And he read this out to me, that drink, you know, I think you say this yourself, was the bit that left out, you know. The other thing he used to say is that when I drink, it stops the voices in my head. So he was beginning to recognise that he was self-medicating. So I suppose that brought a bit more, it brought him a little bit more understanding, you know. And that's the thing with me. I'm fairly compassionate as a human being. What really made me stay, and I think what makes us stay, is the pain that we see in our partner, and we know that we recognise that they really do want to stop, but they're actually stuck in some awful circle. And if you love that person, the compassion was a little bit more powerful than all the other emotions.
Oh, it's a huge dilemma, there's no doubt about it. That's why people come to bottled up in the first place, is because they have this, we've talked about it in other podcasts, this Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
I want to spend time with that person, but I don't want to spend time with this person. I want to spend, Jekyll's lovely, Hyde's awful, But there is this duality and that they're stuck with. And what that does is it brings up a duality in them, I don't want that person near me. Yes, I do. I don't, and there's a tug.
There was another complication for me,
Yeah.
And that is that he was my manager and he did my PA. And so right from the beginning of our relationship, he loved my singing. Yeah. And he said to me one day, "Have you got a PA?" Someone somewhere had tried to give me bits of equipment, and I said, "Well, I've got something under my bed." Yeah. And he went and he took it out and he went out in the yard and he spent the whole afternoon putting this PA together, and then came back and said, "There you are." So at that point, it was like he was taking responsibility to facilitate my singing, and he loved it. And in his defence, never did he get drunk when we were away doing singing songwriting. We would go away for weekends. He never ever got drunk or brought his drinking into that. It happened when he came back.
So he was always very professional during your concerts, during your tours,
and we did TV stuff, and he loved that because the church is not very affirming of things like sound and PA. But when we did television stuff, he loved that because managers are important, and they knew that, So he had a role.
They recognise the professionalism.
But that means we were really interwoven. Because we lived, start off with my singing, and eventually he went in an antique centre and became a dealer in antiques and collectibles. But the main income was really from my singing. That was hard to get out of. When you're a mum, it's harder to get out of, So there's lots of different things that, conspire my life conspired about being to get away. Yeah. So it was hard to get away, so I put lots and lots of energy into trying to make it better.
When you say he was a binge drinker, does that mean he never drank and then just drank? Or do you mean that he drank sometimes kind of moderately and then heavy drinking? Well,
this is where we get to the policing of the fourth piece. Because, so we would amicably agree of what we would bring in. Yeah. So we'd go and buy it together. I'd make sure that I'm, drunk my bit so that he didn't get my bit as well. What I didn't realise...
Just purely to stop him drinking. Yeah.
It's good. You're laughing because, of course, he brought his own stuff in. And then it was on his breath so he could go away and drink more, So we did, what's the word, controlled drinking.
It's part of the alcoholics manual that you're learning this sort of stuff, It's important to know, So it obviously read up to chapter 3 at least.
So we had this controlled drinking farce that went on a lot of the time, and then it would suddenly break out, and then the drinking would be different. He did have a couple of periods though where he got sober. I remember there was a whole year once when he didn't drink. So he had periods where things got so bad.
What initiated that?
I think in the end I plucked up the courage to bring someone in. Just one more complication, all right, which is really relevant to my life, is that I was a gospel singer. We were going around the church, and the untold kind of pressure, if you were doing stuff like that, is your life had to be perfect.
At least perfect.
At least perfect. So we had all that going on as well. So it took me a long time. I think I just brought in the pastor of our church or something. Who had no tools whatsoever to help him, because people have them in the church. They're getting better now. But that shocked him. So I think he gave up for a while because he was being looked at. Yeah. And that's a very motivating thing, really.
It is, actually. I've often said in these podcasts, that addiction thrives in secrecy. you know. And if you can be secret and nobody knows about it and there's no consequences, then why would you stop? But as soon as there's scrutiny, then that's when things maybe start to change. It's certainly something that starts the change process.
Yeah, so we had I suppose what we call nowadays a mini intervention.
A mini intervention,
which really impacted him. Which again, you know, the awful thing about it only being for a year, and we'll talk about this in recovery, is that I was just beginning to let him in again. You know yourself that, you know, they feel immediately better, but you think, well, I'll wait and see, and I'll wait and see. Yeah. And I was just beginning to think, you know, this is going to be different now.
Was Steve a devout Christian?
Yes.
Okay, so the pastor carried some authority?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not just anybody that you brought in. It wasn't a street cleaner, you know, it was somebody with authority as far as he was concerned.
But to quote you, this was before emotions were invented,
yes.
Particularly in the church.
Yeah.
This is a quote from John that I absolutely love. So they, apart from the Bible verses and praying, they had no emotional or psychological tools to help him at all.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And, you know, AA was there, but he couldn't see himself sitting there. I mean, the big barrier for him is he couldn't see himself sitting. He had this vision that to go to AA, he had to sit there and say, I'm an alcoholic. And because he was binge drinking, and we didn't even know what binge drinking was, but in between he was sober, he couldn't say, wouldn't say, this is why we use problem drinking as a term.
Sure. Did he ever go to AA?
Once or twice.
Oh, he actually went?
Yes.
Okay, it's because many people hate AA without going to AA, you know.
Once or twice to recognise that there were a lot more people that had worse stories than him, so that he could trot them out as to why he didn't have to go to AA, because there were some real drunks down there.
Funnily enough, my very first trip to AA was when my wife phoned up AA and somebody arrived at my door, and off I went to this AA meeting. And I celebrated by going to the pub on the way back and fell in the door saying, told you I wasn't an alcoholic, because as you say, there's all these people with real problems, not like me, you know.
I know I'm laughing, but it's ironic looking back, but each of those were major blows to my heart.
Oh, they must have been. Yeah. I think that is a huge problem, you know, that sort of, the promise that's held out to you, the promise of a future which is binge-free, and then it's just snatched away again. That's kind of hope deferred yet again is really, really difficult. Yeah. During his drinking, did he ever blame you for his drinking?
Not really. I blame me sometimes, looking back on it. I mean, if I could go back, you know, what happens when you've got a really major problem like that is everything then can be pushed on your drinker, you know. So, I mean, I just said some horrible things to him sometimes in my anger and scorn, justifying it that I was with a problem drinker. Now, and some of that I brought into our relationship, you know, things that I thought, well, you know, you should always do this, and you should always talk about everything, you know. And you say, whoa, you know, like, for example, I genuinely thought you should talk about everything completely honestly, you know. I mean, sometimes now I've learned that's the worst thing you can do, to deconstruct something even more, you know. So I wish I could go back and say, see that was me. You see that, but, you know. Now, hear this, if you're living with a problem drinker, you know, don't pick up any blame in this, because, again, I was in uncharted territory. I had no chart, no map, no compass, you know. So inevitably, sometimes I took the ship onto the rocks rather than him. But that's very much in hindsight. And I do it with a merciful heart to myself.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of these things, you know, we've talked about this before, you know, you should talk things through if you possibly can. But sometimes you need to wait till the emotions die down. You know, you wait till the storm settles and then you can talk about it.
But I think it's also true, sometimes, like when people really fall out and there is the implication you must get them together in the room, but sometimes those people need a bit more growth.
Space.
Yeah, they need space, but they need growth. And again, I grew in my relationship with you, and I'm looking back at Steve and thinking, oh, that was definitely me, that bit. And, it was very convenient to chuck it all on him.
I think it's very brave of you to sort of accept some responsibility for this. I think that's very brave, because it's very easy to just point the finger.
Absolutely.
In both directions.
Yeah.
In both directions. So, and I think it's very healing also to accept responsibility. I think part of empowering, unfortunately, means accepting responsibility as well. What was he like as a drunk?
He could escalate into getting really mad.
Mad.
First of all, he was a I love you drunk.
Oh, right. Okay, the modelling drunk.
Yes. Then he was a garrulous drunk, where he just wanted to talk through things.
Yeah.
And then if I got mad at him, he would get mad back. And he could sometimes really shout at me.
Violent?
Well, I would say physically, I would say never, except once when he was diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
And then he lashed out at me. And I think because I realised how dreadful he was feeling, I was more merciful at that point. I kind of thought to myself, oh, this is the worst day of your life. But, don't ever take that from me as a permission to do that, because if he had hit me on a regular basis, I would have definitely gone.
Did he frighten you?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the anger and the sort of aggression frightened you, but
yes,
without escalating into the violence.
You're remonstrating with Mark 2, hoping that if you remonstrate loud enough, you'll get Mark 1 back again. But of course, it doesn't work like that. But there's these layers now. We understand there's emotional violence, there's verbal violence, psychological violence. All of these things were there. But the actual physical or sexual violence, no, never.
Okay. We don't have any musts in Bottled Up, except for one.
Yeah.
Be safe.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're safe. That's the only one.
And we understand even that now is a complicated subject, because it used to be these, sexual violence, physical violence, and now we're recognising coercive control and all of these things. These were all streams of kind of violent behaviour. And we understand that you are in and out of some of those when you stay with your drinker, which is not ideal at all, of course.
Yeah.
For me, I think, should I have gone? People ask me that. The honest answer to that is I don't know. There's a real ambivalence, I think, in you about whether you should go or not. You know that you're losing your integrity. You know you're losing your trust. My children, really used to be really scared that I would leave him or that he'd be chucked out, because he was enough of a good dad for them not to want that to happen. What happened to me in the end, this was so vital for me, is one day after getting really mad with him, and my anger poured out after the binging stopped. I can still see him now, sitting looking utterly haunted at the end of the kitchen table whilst I tore him into strips, and I did, and I bitterly regret that, because, we were talking about love. That was the worst thing I could have possibly done, just to tell him how awful he was, because he felt that anyway. And I tried not to do it in front of the kids, but you know what kids are like. If they know there's something going on, they hide behind doors and stuff. And I'm sure they heard some of that. So that was not my finest hour. I don't give myself a hard time, because I think when you're dealing with this, it would test the patience of a saint.
Absolutely.
I do wish I didn't do it. So I just had one of my awful angry scorn bits. And I just thought to myself, I just don't want to do this anymore, because I was not me anymore. I was turning into something else. So I made this decision that I would be the wife that I would look in the mirror and be proud of, not the wife that the drinker, the reactive wife. And so I began to treat him with respect and honour.
Yeah.
And almost the worse he got, the more the respect and honour became almost like an armour around me.
Yeah.
And I felt so empowered when I began to do it, because I thought, no, I'm being me now. It's his responsibility to deal with what's going on in him. But I'm, even I can still feel it, even as we're talking.
This takes us back to an earlier podcast, doesn't it? This detachment, this idea of you make the decision rather than alcohol make the decision.
Yeah.
And that's a very, very empowering. You decide how you are going to be, rather than just react to alcohol all the time, you know.
So I was detaching in love, and it did change the dynamic between us, definitely. He was still broken, but one of the major things he did is he took himself away to drink. I mean, he always used to drink right in the centre of our lounge, and it was awful. But, you know, we began to have really interactive dialogue, and because I was, you know, almost caring and compassionate, I found it was a different sort of pleading. It wasn't a, you've got to change for me. It was more, look, I understand now you're going through it. I understand you know, you don't know how to get out of it, but could you do some things for me? And he responded much better for that.
He would do, because what you're doing is you're calling out the Steve that you loved.
Absolutely.
You're calling it. Very often what we get into, and this was part of what the 4 Ps is about, you know, this picking a fight all the time, this punishing, that these are designed to sort of go, you know, you change, you need to change in essence, and you need to change for me. That's
absolutely.
Whereas what you're doing is you're saying you need to change for you. For you to be the person that you could be, you need to change for you. And really, when a drinker does change, they may change initially for the person that they love, but real change, maintained change, is when they change for them. They change for themselves, and that's very important.
And then I'm so glad I did stay with him because he developed cancer, which was awful. He died within the year of the diagnosis, but he couldn't keep drink down. So I saw a bravery in him. He found in the end the courage, and he died without his drink. He went through the cancer without his drink. And it was a very poignant time, but a time of healing for us. You know, again, I'm feeling quite a lot of emotion.
Of course you will. Of course you will.
You know, but a friend said to me, I had a friend called Faith who kind of committed herself to be at the other end of the phone through all of my trauma.
That's a very sort of apt name for
Yes,
a friend,
absolutely.
isn't it?
Yes, she was such a good friend. But she said to me at the end, Lou, I'm so proud of you. You loved him to the end. And it's true. And it's a different sort of love. The romantic love, I'm afraid, is the casualty of living with a problem drinker. But in the end, I loved him because every human being, I believe, deserves honour, respect and love. And I found the power of it.
I've heard you say this before, and I think that previously what you said was you loved him, but you weren't in love with him anymore.
True.
You know? And I thought that was a very powerful statement of where you were at. You know?
And it's why we met. I mean, we met, didn't we? And we fell in love quite quickly. Which I felt because he was so wonderful. And I felt...
How could you resist?
I felt quite guilty to start off with because I'm a counsellor, you know, I know 2 years minimum to grieve, but it was the fact that I hadn't been in love with my husband for quite a long time. My kids were amazing about that, you know. I remember driving to my mum's crying because I thought I'd become a nun or something like that. Felt like the next logical step, get my kids, you know, off and settled, I'd become a nun. But I remember crying and saying, I will never know what it's like to be loved well. And then he brought you into my life, and I am loved well.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear it. Question. What would you tell your younger self? If you could go back to your 30-year-old, 35, 40-year-old self, what would you say to you?
What comes straight into my mind is get out quick. Oh, dear. I would say well done. We say this a lot in podcasts. If you're living with a problem drinker and trying to find your way through, your Oscar material. I would give myself an Oscar for what we went through. But yeah, part of me would say get out quick. I understand why people say just go away and leave him, you know, because it seems such an easy solution, but you love, and so it's not an easy solution. It's the last solution when you love. So I think that those two things, well done, get a grip, get out. So
You can understand that, yeah. What have you learned from it? What have you learned about you?
That's a really interesting question. I've learned that pain is an incredible currency. If you allow it to, it makes you bitter and resentful, and I went through that, or it makes you compassionate and merciful and kind. And going from the bitterness to that is a very long journey. But also, I genuinely believe, and I believe it true in the spiritual realm as well as the natural realm, that you can spend your pain. And we do Bottled Up now, and I met you, and you were a drinker, and now you were a professor of drink and drugs. I'm a counsellor. I lived with a drinker. So our pain now is being spent in a powerful way. So I say this to the clients that come to see me, that if you respond in the right way with what you're going through, you will look back and you will see this was the most formative time of your life, and can be extremely powerful and really formative and transformative,
Yeah, I mean, Bottled Up has started very much because of you. I'd been working in the alcohol field for a long time, but I'd always been working with drinkers and addicts, and that was my thing. And teaching people how to deal with them, but not really the families. And it was meeting you that sort of drew me into the family part of it. And I'm so glad I did. So glad I did, because for me, it feels a bit like I'm not spending my pain, but maybe spending my guilt. It's a bit like making amends. I can't make amends to my wife because she left, but I can help make amends to other people. And that came from you.
Yeah.
That came from you. And, and it's been quite a journey.
Yes.
I felt that if there was like a recipe, you put all the ingredients in, Lou's a counsellor, she married and lived with a drinker. I was a psychologist, and and I was also an alcoholic. So you put all those things together, and you think, I wonder what this will make.
Yes.
And Bottled Up was the answer. That's what it made, because we decided that we would. If we are not unique, at least this kind of combination of talents or combination of traits is at least rare. So we wanted to put it out there, and was Bottled Up.
So I think I've talked long enough, don't you?
It probably is. No, that's it. Thank you. I really appreciate that. It was very brave of you. Thank you.
Please like and subscribe if you like the podcast, and if you like what we're doing, please leave us a good review or even share with somebody else. It helps us reach as many people as possible. And join us next time. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.